When my husband's company went under, I cashed out my 401k to keep us afloat. His parents moved in soon after, saying it was temporary. 3 years later, they still occupied the master bedroom, left dirty dishes everywhere, and called me overbearing for asking for quiet after midnight. One morning, his father yelled from the couch, "What's for breakfast, chef?" I asked my husband to talk to them. He said, "They're my parents. If you can't handle it, maybe you should go." So I did. I'm 45 now. This started when I was 42. My husband, Todd, was always the dreamer type. He had big ideas and talked like he was going to change the world. I never cared much for all that. What mattered to me was that we were building something real together. A home, a future. I had a good job working in financial services in St. Louis. Nothing glamorous, just solid. I've always been the stable one. The planner. Todd had a startup. I won't get into what it did because it never really did anything, not in the end. But I believed in him. I wanted to be a supportive wife. So when the business started to fall apart and he was stressed and shaking in our kitchen, I didn't hesitate. I cashed out my 401k. Years of saving, gone in a click. I told him I'd do whatever it took to keep us going. He cried, said I saved him, said he didn't deserve me. Looking back, that last part was probably the most honest thing he ever said. The money didn't help much. The company folded about 3 months later. Todd didn't get another job. Said he needed time to figure things out. Then his parents showed up. Patty and Ron. They lived out in Kansas before. I'd met them a few times, enough to know they were exhausting in small doses. I never imagined they'd become part of my everyday life. Todd said they'd lost their place and just needed a little help. A few weeks. Maybe a couple months tops. They arrived with 3 suitcases and a U-Haul. I was standing in the doorway in my work clothes while Patty marched in with a giant potted plant and said, "This feels more like our kind of place." Ron came in behind her, carrying a cooler full of frozen casseroles like they were moving in for the long haul. And then, just like that, they took the master bedroom. Didn't ask. Didn't hesitate. I got home from work the next day and found all my things moved. My clothes stuffed into plastic bins. My side of the bed empty. Patty was lounging on my comforter, flipping through a crossword book like she owned the place. "I need the big bathroom," she said. "My hip's been acting up." Todd just said, "It's no big deal, babe. We'll just crash in the guest room." Except we didn't. He started sleeping in the master with them. Said Ron snored so loud he needed to be there to help his mom get rest. I didn't understand it, but I was so tired from working and trying to keep the house from falling apart that I just gave up fighting about it. That was the start of the 3 worst years of my life. They were pigs. That's not me being dramatic. I'd wake up and find pizza boxes on the floor, cigarette ashes and mugs, wet towels on the carpet. They never cleaned, never cooked, never bought groceries, never once paid rent or even asked if we needed anything. They treated me like I was the guest. Like I was the problem. I'd come home from work and find Patty watching soap operas on full blast, yelling at the TV. Ron would be shirtless, drinking beer and farting like it was his job. I asked for simple things. Could you guys please rinse your dishes? Could you turn the TV down at night? Could you not leave raw chicken out on the counter? Patty rolled her eyes and called me a neat freak. Ron said, "You should learn to chill out. You're not the sheriff of the kitchen." I begged Todd to step in. I tried to be calm. I tried to be kind. "I don't want to fight," I told him one night. "But this isn't normal. They're taking over. I need you to help me." He just looked tired. Or maybe bored. "They're my parents," he said. "I'm not kicking them out. If you can't handle it, maybe you should go." I went numb after that. I stopped arguing. Stopped trying. Then came that morning. I was in the kitchen, trying to make eggs before heading out to work. I had a 9 a.m. meeting and hadn't slept because Patty had been watching TV until 2. I was dead on my feet. Ron waddled in from the living room, scratched his stomach under his stained tank top, and shouted, "What's for breakfast, chef?" I didn't say a word, just stood there, spatula in hand, watching the eggs burn in the pan. And in that moment, something in me broke. I was done. Done being quiet. Done sacrificing. Done begging for basic respect in my own damn home. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded to myself, turned off the stove, and started planning. I was going to leave. But I wasn't going empty-handed. Next ChatGPT said, I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not Todd, not his parents, not even my coworkers. I just started putting things in motion, quietly, like I was cleaning up someone else's mess. I called a lawyer first, one that specialized in marital property and asset recovery. I explained the situation. The house was in my name had been from the beginning. I'd bought it before we got married, and I'd paid the mortgage alone for years. Todd never contributed. The lawyer smiled through the phone. You've got leverage, she said. A lot more than you think. Next, I opened a new checking account at a different bank. I rerouted my direct deposit from work, canceled the joint card Todd never used anyway, and started setting aside cash. Every week a little more. Nothing they'd notice. Then I started gathering documents. Mortgage statements, bank statements, old 401k withdrawal paperwork. I found the email Todd had sent me when I cashed out my retirement. I swear I'll pay you back, every dime. This means everything. I printed it, highlighted it, and filed it away. While I did all this, life inside the house got worse. Patty accused me of hiding her pills when she couldn't remember where she'd put them. Ron started referring to me as the maid when talking to his friends on speakerphone. Todd barely looked at me anymore. One night, he brought up the idea of refinancing the house. I need to be added to the deed, he said casually, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I laughed. Out loud. You're not touching that house, I said. You didn't pay for it. You haven't paid a bill in 3 years. He blinked like I'd slapped him. You're being spiteful, he said. We're married. What's yours is mine. I walked out of the room. That was the moment I knew I had to hit harder. So I called a realtor I trusted and asked her what the house could sell for. She came by during the day, while everyone was out or sleeping, and told me it had gone up nearly $80,000 in value. I asked her how fast it could sell. She said, with a clean listing and a fair price? Less than a month. I said, let's do it. I waited for a weekend when everyone would be gone. Patty and Ron had a wedding out of state, and Todd was going with them. They packed up Friday morning and left around noon. By 2 p.m., I had a locksmith at the house. By 5 p.m., the locks were changed, the listing was live, and I had packed up every personal thing I cared about. Clothes, photos, my dad's old army jacket, and my grandmother's jewelry box. The rest? I didn't give a damn. I moved into a rental that night. A tiny duplex on the other side of town. It was quiet. It was mine. I didn't tell Todd. I didn't even call him. On Monday morning, I had my lawyer send the separation papers and the notice of property sale. The house was in my name. I had every receipt to prove it. He had no legal claim. But I wasn't done. A week passed before I got the first call. It was Todd. He called 3 times before I finally answered. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to hear what he sounded like now that I was gone. He didn't ask where I was. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just said, "What the hell did you do?" I said nothing. He ranted. My parents showed up and couldn't even get inside. You changed the locks? You listed the house without even telling me. I told him the truth, plain and steady. The house is mine. Always was. I'm done being a doormat. You're blowing up our lives, he snapped. Do you have any idea what this looks like to my parents? I laughed. I couldn't help it. I hope it looks like eviction. He hung up. The next day, his mother left me a voicemail. Just one sentence. You'll regret this, sweetheart. 2 days later, I found out what she meant. Someone had slashed the tires on my car in the duplex driveway. All 4 of them. Deep cuts, careful and clean. Whoever did it knew how to make it hurt. I filed a police report, but I didn't need an investigator to guess. There were only 3 people in the world who would do something like that. I called Todd. "You think I did that?" He asked, sounding fake offended. "No," I said. "But your dad's hands weren't made for typing." He didn't deny it. After that, I started getting anonymous messages through social media. Fake accounts. Things like, "Rod alone, hope it was worth it, and wanna see what real revenge looks like." I screenshotted every single one and gave them to my lawyer. We filed a restraining order. It didn't stick right away because, of course, everything takes time, but it started a paper trail. That mattered. Meanwhile, the house sold in 3 weeks. I got full asking price. After closing costs, I walked away with $212,000. Todd tried to fight for a share. Claimed we were still married, that he was owed something. But my lawyer buried him in paperwork. The title, the deed, my pay stubs, the original mortgage, the 401k withdrawal. Emails from him acknowledging he hadn't paid a cent. The judge wasn't impressed with his sob story. He got nothing. Still, I wasn't finished. Because while I was sorting all this out, I discovered something. A credit card in my name. One I didn't open. Maxed out. $7,400 in charges. Mostly electronics, liquor, some weird hotel stays in nearby towns. All of it opened right around the time Patty and Ron moved in. I pulled the statements. Every charge lined up with the exact months they were unemployed and just getting back on their feet. When I confronted Todd, he said, "You're blowing things out of proportion." They were helping with the house. We needed stuff. "No," I said. They were helping themselves. So I filed fraud charges. The card company launched an investigation. That's when everything started spiraling for them. About 2 weeks after I filed the fraud report, I got a call from the credit card company's investigator. His tone was formal but tight, like he was holding back from saying what he really thought. "We've completed our review," he said. "Your name was used to open the account, but the purchases and account activity don't match your financial behavior. We'll be removing the charges and flagging the account for law enforcement. We'll also be pursuing the individuals responsible." It wasn't just a win. It was validation. Proof I wasn't crazy. I didn't tell Todd. I wanted him to find out the hard way. And he did. A month later, a detective left me a message asking if I'd be willing to give a formal statement for a possible criminal case. I drove down the next day, handed them the timeline, and gave them everything: printouts, text logs, the bank's findings. I signed the papers and walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. But the fallout didn't stop there. I guess the investigation spooked Patty and Ron because out of nowhere, I started getting messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old friends, family members, even a few of Todd's cousins I'd met once at our wedding. "Just saw Patty's rant on Facebook. Are you okay? You really froze them out of the house? Damn. She said you robbed them blind. That you're mentally unstable." Patty was running her mouth online, posting photos of Todd looking miserable, long captions about how I'd kicked a struggling family into the street and destroyed her son's life. She called me dangerous. Claimed I had violent episodes. Todd reposted it all. Didn't defend me once. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark of my new place, staring at the wall, heart racing. Not because I was scared, but because I knew what I had to do next. I gathered every message, every post, every comment, and sent it straight to my lawyer. Then I pulled out one last folder, an old one, buried deep in my closet. It had a copy of our prenup. I'd almost forgotten about it. We'd signed it early in our marriage, years before things went bad. At the time, it felt romantic, like saying, "Even if this doesn't work, I'll protect what's yours." I didn't think I'd ever need it, but in that moment, it was my final shield. The prenup clearly stated that all pre-marriage assets remained separate. My house, my savings, even that 401k, technically, before I drained it. We submitted it with the divorce filing. When Todd got served, he exploded. I know this because his friend Mark, one of the few decent people left in his circle, called me to warn me. He threw a chair across the room, Mark said. Told everyone you were trying to erase him. No, I said, I'm just finally seeing him clearly. Todd tried to play the victim. Said I was ruining his life out of spite. Told the court he'd invested emotionally and physically into the house. Claimed he deserved half. But then came the kicker. My lawyer presented the receipts from the 401k transfer. We showed exactly how much I put into that house. How I'd paid every bill, every repair, every property tax. And how Todd had spent the last 3 years unemployed, sleeping next to his mother while his parents ran the place into the ground. The judge didn't even flinch. You're not entitled to a single dime, she said. But it was about more than money now. It was about pride, which is probably why Todd did what he did next. 2 weeks after the court ruling, I got an email from my HR department at work. The subject line made my stomach drop. Urgent. Possible breach of conduct. External complaint received. I opened it. Somebody had emailed my company, pretending to be a concerned former friend. They accused me of financial misconduct, hinted at drug abuse, and even claimed I'd been under investigation for elder abuse, ejecting vulnerable seniors from a shared home. There were no signatures, no names. Just a messy story that sounded familiar. Patty. And probably Todd too. I sat there shaking. Not from fear, but rage. I forwarded the email straight to my lawyer. My HR already knew about my divorce drama because I'd been upfront early on. They were supportive, and the legal team assured me this would be investigated, but they weren't going to act on baseless claims. That night, I made one final decision. I was going to burn what was left of Todd's little world. Legally, carefully, and completely. My lawyer filed a motion to pursue damages for defamation. We compiled every social media post, every message to my workplace, and every lie they'd spread. We added the fraud charges to it, now active with law enforcement. But that wasn't the biggest move. Todd had recently started a new job, finally. He was freelancing for a local real estate investor. I did some digging and found out his new employer had no idea about his financial fraud history or the police report tied to the stolen credit card. So I sent them a package. Nothing anonymous. Just facts. The court documents, the bank's fraud findings, the open police report, the credit card company's formal letter. Everything clean, clear, and legal. The fallout came fast. Todd was let go within a week. The company didn't want the drama. Didn't want his name on any contracts that could blow back later. I didn't hear from him again, but I did hear from Ron. He called me. Left a voicemail, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. You didn't have to destroy us, he said. We're family. Or we were. I played the message twice, then deleted it. A month later, the defamation case closed. The judge ordered Todd and his parents to pay damages. Not a huge amount, just under $20,000, but enough to sting. Enough that they couldn't ignore it. Last I heard, they were living in a rental out in Rolla. Ron had picked up a security job. Patty was working at a local diner. Todd was unemployed again. And the irony? His credit was ruined. He couldn't qualify for a home loan anymore. Not even for a condo. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. I bought a small condo of my own. Quiet. Clean. Just mine. I got back into saving, started a new 401k, even joined a book club. Not because I liked reading that much, but because it felt good to be around people who didn't expect me to cook or clean for them. And sometimes when I drive home late and the night feels still, I remember the way Ron used to yell, "What's for breakfast, chef?" like I was some damn servant. And I smile. Because now, he's cooking his own damn eggs.